Welcome to the Travel Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Aylin Blanco. I interview successful industry professionals and share my personal journey to becoming a travel agent. The show is for aspiring travel agents and travel professionals at every level. My mission is to uncover the universal keys to thrive in this business. Join me as I take a closer look into the life of a travel agent. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Travel Agent Podcast. I am so excited for you to hear this guest. I've been trying to get him on the show for a very long time. We finally found our schedules to link up today, so it's going to be a treat. And I'm going to let him introduce himself.
So thank you so much, Lynn, for having me here. I'm finally glad after 6 months of trying. We tried it in January. It only happened in July. But I'm Eric Hrubant, the founder and owner and still lead agent of Sire Travel, where I'm headquartered in New York. I operate out of the Zell Travel / Travel Leaders offices. And I am quarantining at my home and office in Kennebunkport, Maine. So I've been here for since the beginning of March now. So I'm not complaining about it.
Nice. So I ask all of my guests the same first question. How did you get into travel?
So as everyone I've ever met in life, it happened by accident. I was born and raised in Queens, New York, and I always had to work. So I always had a day job, and I went to school at night. So I was actually training to be a social worker, but I did all of my classes at nighttime. And at the time, my mother was a nanny, and the woman that she worked for, her travel agent needed basically a secretary. So this is back in 1997 when there were still paper tickets and there was a lot more administrative work. So that's how I started. It happened by accident. So I worked basically, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I went to school at night. And I started out from the very bottom. So quote unquote, back in the day when it was paper tickets, it was basically like typing in a typewriter, everyone's name on it, sending them out. It was a very manual job because, you had to literally FedEx tickets or UPS them and have them messenger and answering the phones. So I literally started from the bottom up. And then after a few years working in travel, I started working for a woman who was an independent contractor, meaning she had her own business within a larger company. And I was the assistant office manager at that point. And I was in charge of, once again, all of like the administrative duties for the office. And I wanted to be more of an agent. And she was great to work for, and I helped her build her business. And after being on the phone for a couple of days, people sort of liked me and trusted me. And I'm good on the phone. I'm good in email, and the rest is history. So fast forward to 2020. I'm 43. I've been doing this my entire adult life, and I've owned my own business of Sire Travel exactly 7 years ago now. And the woman I worked for, she retired in 2012. So I basically bought her book of business, which I helped create, and then I rebranded it.
Awesome. So you've been in the game a long time.
Yes, my entire adult life. And it's very funny. I always joke, having all that social work training, social workers basically teach you, it's really customer service. So that comes in handy. And the most important thing that I want to say right off the bat in this podcast is I always tell my staff and I tell anyone who wants to get into the business, it's great if you want to travel. It's great if you like to travel. That's fantastic. But first and foremost, you work in a service industry. So Sire Travel is a service company, and the service we provide is travel services. So I think that's very important for anyone starting out. It's okay to want to, go on free trips and, to win on Instagram. But at the end of the day, you need to be there for your clients nonstop and be their advocate.
And you have segued us into the very first question of what do you wish someone would have told you when you first started that would be super helpful and kind of have maybe moved you through the business quicker?
Yeah, that's no one's asked me that question. It's actually a really smart question. Thank you. I don't know. The only thing, I started out by accident in this job, and I didn't realize, I still thought I'd do this would be my day job, and then I go into my field that I was going to, social work. But what I didn't realize back then was that travel is huge. It's a multi-trillion-dollar worldwide business, and there's so many facets. So, I happen to own a travel agency, a concierge agency, and we do, we do like say 75% corporate travel and 25% high-end leisure travel. But there's so many avenues, and the more that you network and talk to people and interview people, the more you realize what's out there. So it really is the kind of thing where there's so many opportunities. Even if you work 5 years as a travel agent and then you want to move into, say, sales or guiding tours or really anything. Now in just this day and age, especially now with COVID, you can work anywhere. I could be talking to you from the middle of Europe. You wouldn't know. So it's very easy to kind of make your own schedule and own life as well.
That is the truth, especially during COVID. I was hoping to be quarantined in Mexico. It didn't really work out for me, but it's the truth. So what is something that you feel like you might have failed at in the beginning or didn't work out so well for you in the beginning that you feel like you've mastered at this point?
A couple things. I am ridiculously optimistic. I am always half glass full. That's just my personality. I really believe when you wake up in the morning, you have the choice of focusing on the negative or the positive. So while I'm not always Polly Sunshine, I make an effort to be a positive person and really find, like the silver lining in everything, even during this COVID time. The one thing that has sort of been, something that I wish I knew more was really to be yourself. Like I sort of, felt like, oh, I don't have an MBA or I don't have a super formal education. And I always felt like I was a little too rough around the edges. And I finally realized after a while that that's actually what made me me. So when I stopped trying to use big words and stopped trying to like sound like a robot or talk with a script, when I talk to new clients or prospective new clients or anyone, I realize, I am my own brand. And so I have that chip on my shoulder is now gone. So it's really to just sort of talk from the heart. When you're talking to people about what you do, nobody really cares what you do. They want to know what you can do for them. So I find that if you sort of talk in storytelling. So if someone says, oh, you're a travel agent or travel agents don't exist, rather than say, of course we exist, I'll just say, oh, we exist. And then I'll immediately go into a very short story about how I saved the day for somebody, because immediately then that kind of grabs them. And, you can continue the conversation and they're going to remember.
You're absolutely right. Again, it's about, you're doing something, creating a service for someone else. And I think a lot of the times it is me. So that is brilliant advice.
Thank you.
So I want to know a little bit more about you and how you were able to create this wonderful business and where it all came from when you decided 7 years ago that you were going to step out on your own.
Yep. So I'm going to be long-winded here, so feel free to cut me off anytime.
No worries.
I grew up, very poor in Queens, New York. My mother was a single mother who worked her ass off, and I was a latchkey kid. So I came home from school every day, and I'd watch Oprah. So from like a little 7-year-old kid, Oprah was my babysitter at 4:00 every day. And I knew being a kid, I did not like being poor. Like I knew having like, one pair of sneakers to last a year, and never going out to eat or anything else was not what I wanted. So I was very aware from that early point on, I needed to make sure that I did something. I remember the end of the Oprah show, she always had Harpo Studios. So that's her company, which Oprah backwards. So from a little 7-year-old kid, I was like, oh, I'm going to have a company one day and call it Sire, which is Eric backwards. So I didn't know what that company was going to be, but I knew when I had a company, it'd be called Sire, whatever that is. So that's sort of how I started off when I was 7, then fast forward to when I was like 20, I guess it was, or 21, I started working in a travel agency. And one thing led to another. I was also very lucky. So I worked for a woman named Marie McGregor at MMG Travel, and she's now retired. And she really was like a second mother to me. So she taught me pretty much everything that I know. And she really helped me, run the business with her. So I wasn't just servicing the clients. She incorporated me into everything that she did, the good, bad, and the ugly. So, and with her, we lived through 9/11 and the big New York blackout and everything else. So I really had hands-on training. I always like to say that it was sort of like the bartender behind the bar, where, you're in the place every day and you're like, well, if this was my business, I do things differently. So when she was ready to retire, I knew that I'd buy her book of business and rebrand it my way. So I will say that I probably had it much easier because it wasn't a startup. The clients already knew me. We already had staff, but it really was kind of saying, okay, here, we're no longer MMG Travel. We're now Sire Travel. Here's what that means. And then growing from there. My goal is to do $50 million in sales a year. That's my big goal for my business. And last year I did just about 19. So I do have visions of grandeur, and I want to make an impact. And I really love being able to hire people and give other people livelihood. And COVID notwithstanding, I have an amazing team of 12. And I want that to double and triple. And that's sort of what motivates me too, not just helping clients, but also making sure that I cultivate a place where people genuinely like being.
I love it. So when you took over that book of business, what did you kind of decide that you were going to do differently that kind of sets you apart?
So when I started the business, it was, early 2013. And so my old boss didn't advertise, and we had good business. But I was like, imagine if we, advertise, I'm using air quotes, what would that be? And sort of just from my own trial and error, I realized that most people, as you said yourself, don't even know that travel agents exist or what we do. And I talk to so many other travel agents, peers of mine, people that are older, younger, in all walks of life. And everybody, complains about, the internet, or, people don't book through me. And without sounding like a jerk, it's kind of their fault. Part of marketing is telling people what you do and how you do it. And if someone doesn't know about you, then that's kind of your fault. So I really, that's why I keep going back to storytelling. So in everything that you do, you really need to tell the story about what you do and how you save people's day. And it doesn't have to be some, grand thing where you spend a lot of money. It could just be your own social media, where when you have a client who missed a flight and you got them the last seat on the next flight, so they got home to their kids that night, that's a perfect marketing story, telling someone how you saved the day. Or, if someone sends you a thank you and they check into the hotel and they were upgraded, that's a great way to market yourself. So I really think that travel agents, no matter where you fall, it's really your job to tell your story, and tell people what value you bring, because they don't know. And you can't be bitter about that. You can't be mad. If your best friend books on Orbitz rather than you're not telling the story to your own best friend. And I think now with COVID, and hopefully if we come out of this mess sooner than later, people really want people. They want someone to hold their hand. I also think, people that are considered smaller businesses, even like myself, people that's on brand right now. People want to help small business. People want to help people. So I keep saying, when you use Sire Travel, you're supporting me and Nikki and Robin and Esther, and providing for their families as well. So there's nothing wrong with, any of the online websites or the big box stores. But when you work with a concierge service like Sire, we have your back, and you kind of have our back too, because we're able to sort of live our lives and pay our bills because of you. So
I love it. So that takes us to COVID-19.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you're doing to keep yourself sane and also to position yourself when this is over?
Yep. So at 5:00, I have a gin and tonic. And then at 6:00, I start with a bottle of wine. So that keeps me sane. I also live near the beach, so I can kind of go to the beach for a walk. But in all seriousness, staying sane, I'm not sure I qualify to speak intelligently about that one. But COVID-19 it came out of nowhere. Like in January, I was thinking about hiring new people. And then all of a sudden, by the end of February, I was thinking, oh crap, I'm going to have to start furloughing people. And that broke my heart. So it's kind of been this reset. We also were so busy at the beginning of COVID because we had clients all over the world, both in business and vacations and business travel, that we had to get home, or people that were on a 3-week honeymoon, we had to basically cut their honeymoon short and get them home and do everything. So all of March was sort of like a blur. I felt like I didn't know if it was what time of day it was, because we were working 24/7. And then unfortunately I did have to furlough most of my staff. I still have a staff of 3 as opposed to a staff of 12. So that was very challenging, having to tell someone that literally overnight there's no cash flow. However, what I will say is that I have not scaled back on my marketing. So luckily I had a little bit of savings. I had like a marketing savings account. So I'm still making sure that my website is up to date. I'm doing SEO. I'm posting everywhere, because more than ever, I think people need to know that, if you book with a company like Sire Travel, we have your back. So if your flight's canceled, or you're delayed, or you're stranded, you can call us at 3:00 in the morning and we'll be there to answer the phone, even if it's not me personally. You'll never be stranded somewhere. You'll always be able to get to your meetings, get home from your meetings. And if you have a vacation that goes wrong or you need an advocate, you have someone there. So I think now is the perfect time to just basically, once again, I sound like a broken record right now, but just storytell on how you're saving the day. And while we can't compare to, necessarily like nurses and doctors and first responders, we had a honeymoon couple who, it was, the afternoon for us, and it was the middle of the night for them. And we learned they were in Thailand. We learned that Thailand was closing down in 24 hours. I mean, we literally just had to book them on a flight. They weren't answering their cell phones. So we literally had to do all of this. So when they woke up in the morning, these poor people were kind of like, crap, we can't go on. We need to literally pack our bags and get to the airport. I mean, we did that all for them. Had they not known, by the time they woke up and watched the news, they would have been stuck in Thailand, because we literally got them on, the last 2 seats and one of the last flights out, kind of a thing. So, those sort of stories where if they were doing this on their own, God knows the sort of trouble they would have been in. And on the corporate side, at the beginning of this, we had one of our clients, they had 45 employees in Abu Dhabi, and they had to get all 45 people back to the US. And within a 2-hour time frame, we were able to make sure that everybody had a flight out and got home. And we were with them every step of the way. So, really just talk about what you do. Write down what you do throughout the day. And even if you don't find it interesting, other people may.
I love that so much, because customer service and articulating the value, that's part of the reason why I created the podcast, because like I told you, somebody suggested it to me and I was like, travel agents don't exist. It's not a real thing. It's not a real career. Found out that it is, but it's mainly because I feel like we don't articulate our value very well.
Yep.
And I love the way that you do it by storytelling.
It is. It feels natural. It's not yucky and salesy. Like, I'm not yucky and salesy. I'm a New Yorker where, sort of like, I don't mince my words. I'm rough around the edges. And I think people kind of relate with that. I also work damn hard for all of my clients. And when I'm doing a new client intake, depending on how I feel their personality is, I'll tell them they're lucky to have us. At the end of the phone call, I'll be like, well, I'm so happy to work with you and help you fulfill all of your dreams and aspirations when it comes to travel. I'm like, you are now working with Eric and Sire and the best team in the business. We have your back. So just about they even have us, I think, it's sort of a fine line between confident and cocky. So, and I'm not saying I'm good at either of those, but, you really do have to make sure that people want to work with you. It's just the same reason why someone will buy, a $300 Gucci t-shirt versus a $5 one at Target. You have to sort of like create the desire, create the feeling. And, people can book travel anywhere, but you want to make sure that they're able to book with you. So you're the product, you're the brand. And you have to make sure if you have a team that they reflect that brand as well, because people are purchasing because they like you and trust you. And that's very important. And for me, that was all trial and error. I had no marketing background. I mean, technically, I'm a high school dropout. I got my GED, and even though I was in school to be a social worker, I never finished. I dropped out of college before it ended. So I have no formal business training, no MBA. It was just literal all trial and error. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of successes, but COVID notwithstanding, rather, I make as much as a lawyer. So it really is just a matter of kind of finding your niche and finding what you're good at. And don't be afraid of learning a GDS. Don't be afraid of Sabre or Amadeus. It's really not a big, bad machine. It's a tool that will help you make money and service people. Don't be afraid of, if you can afford it, getting a small business loan to create a killer website and get your SEO going so people can find you. You do have to spend money. I know everyone is like, oh, taking a business loan, it's sort of a necessary evil sometimes if you want to start a business, but it will come back to you if you can kind of like always remember the big picture.
I love it so much. I was going to ask you, tell us one of your secrets, and you told us several. So
yeah. But once again, going back really, SEO, search engine optimization, is so, so important. You really need to have a great website where people can find you. And so if someone is searching, travel agency, or corporate travel or vacation travel, whatever it is, they can find you. Sort of like hashtags for the web minus the hashtag. So that's very important. You pay attention to SEO. It's a little bit confusing, but talk to people who know about it. Make sure that there's keywords. Make sure that you're always writing content. So even if you can't afford to hire someone to write for you, like you mentioned a virtual assistant in our pre-phone call, you could always find someone for a small amount of money that can write an article for you that keeps your website current. And if you want to sell Mexico, or if you want to sell Brazil or sell Italy, write about those names so people find it. They read it. They know you're an expert. And yes, there's cost associated with it, but it really does, the more you put out, the more you get. So I really can't enough. People have to be able to find you. And depending on where you live, Google knows where you are. So, if you're in New York City and someone Googles travel agency, you can find me because there's a lot of people. But if you're in like a smaller state or a smaller city, and if someone's in your own city, make sure they can at least find you. Start there and then branch on.
Such great advice. So what I want to know is, what do you have on the horizon? What is something that you're super excited about? Because you'd said that, glass half full, and we're still in the throes of COVID. So I'm looking for some of your bright shininess to rub off on me.
Thank you. I'll try. Some days are hard. Some days are easy. My main goal right now my current staff is to really get them back up at a salary that was pre-COVID, and then to hire back everyone that I've had a furlough. So that's really my main thing, is to get everybody back. And I'm hoping that, I think most of the clients I service on the corporate side are still around. And I also, not to go on another tangent, I apologize, but I lived through the 2008, 2009 economic crisis. And a lot of companies went under, or they literally had to lay off a lot of people. All of those people have to go somewhere. So if you're a corporate travel agent now, or you have some corporate clients, you're in vacation clients, stay in touch with them as much as you can, especially on LinkedIn and other social media ways. Because, if they were laid off from a company, they have to go somewhere else eventually, right? Get a new job, start their own company. And if they have to travel, you want them to call you and be like, hey, I worked with a great travel agent at my last company. And in 2008, 2009, there was a big, dip because of the economy. But then 2 years later, we had a boom because everybody went somewhere else, started calling us. So while we may have lost 2 or 3 accounts, we gained, 30 because of all of the fruit of the tree. So that's important to really think now with COVID. Keep up on your LinkedIn. Keep up with all of your clients, not in a pushy way, but if you think about it, when I look at my Gmail account, Macy's emails me every day. I don't need to hear from Macy's every day, but I do. So, at least having touch points with your clients on a monthly or quarterly basis, if that's through an email or social media, just so you're always top of mind. And, like I'm part of the Signature Travel Network, and they produce this beautiful magazine that's white labeled. So it says Sire Travel on it. So anyone that I've ever planned a trip with still gets this quarterly magazine. And don't be afraid to kind of just reach out and say hi to somebody. I know that sounds weird in this day and age, but with COVID especially, doing handwritten cards or just sending a quick email to just say hello to people, it really is a lifeline. As for me, the only travel that I personally plan right now is to explore northern Maine. And Miraval just opened a new location in the Berkshires in New York. So I'd like to go, and Massachusetts. So I'd like to actually go to the new Miraval, which opens next week, and I hope to go in the end of the year. And I had a great trip to France planned for this year, which I'm not doing next year, and some other stuff. So I'm not afraid to get on a plane or travel at all. I think they're probably some of the safest places to be right now because everyone's so hyper vigilant to keep people healthy. So I think if you're, check with your doctor, but, get out and go. And I really hope that as I get back on the road, I can start talking about it more, storytelling about it, so people hopefully feel safe. But I keep on LinkedIn. I recently wrote a little piece about don't call it a comeback, kind of like LL Cool J. So I'm like, we're not going anywhere. Like, we're still here. We're still fighting, right? And we're still fighting to be relevant and to make sure that people know we exist. So, while it's not a super sexy way to answer your question, for me, just to get my staff back and to make sure that people know we're out there is what motivates me, as dorky as that sounds.
It's not dorky. I love it so much. You have been such an amazing guest. You gave us so many gems. And I hope to have you on again so you can tell us how your travels went. I look forward to reading your short stories and in your storytelling, because you do it so well.
Thank you.
And that's a skill that you can learn. But storytelling, it changes the conversation and makes people comfortable. And even just sitting here having this conversation with you was so easy. This interview was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, I really like to champion others. I really like talking to other people in travel, hoping to inspire them. So, and anyone listening, Eric Hrubant, Cire Travel, CIRE Travel. Check me out online. Send me a message. I'm happy to talk and help. And I'm even thinking about starting like a mentorship program myself, just because I feel like I can bring value to other people that may need a little bit of mindset training or marketing training, or just someone to sort of hold their hand as they start their own business.
Or a podcast. And I know somebody who's actually, into that right now. So if that's something you're looking at, let me know.
Yes.
Because I think your podcast will be awesome.
Resonate with this, and we'll take it from there. And thank you for all you're doing too. You're doing really great work getting the word out there. And you have so much on your plate already. The fact that you're still doing this is commendable. So go, Lynn.
Well, thank you. All of his information will be in his blog post. And again, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening. This was such a great episode, but it also reminded me that if you are a travel professional and you are trying to figure out how you can pivot and how you can be productive and something that will set your agency apart, podcasting is a wonderful platform to engage your ideal client, to keep in contact with them, and to keep you front of mind. So if you have been trying to figure out what you can be doing right now and what would be beneficial, let's chat about you starting your podcast. The Travel Agent's Guide to Starting, Launching, and Growing a Podcast is available. And right now, because it is a beta course, it is going to be 50% off. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast and think it might be beneficial for your business while you build authority and engage with your ideal audience, please let me know. I would love to help. Thank you for joining the Travel Agent Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Visit thetravelagentpodcast.com for more information about today's episode and other travel agent resources. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for new episodes. Until next time, continue to build a travel business you love.